Welcome to session 3 in Practicing Jesus. This session's called Beloved. Another take on okay. Before the era of GPS, mariners in the northern hemisphere relied upon one star to figure out where they were and where they were headed in the vastness of the ocean. There was one star amidst the millions of stars in the sky. And that star, Polaris, the North Star, while it's not the brightest star, is always in the same place. The entire northern sky wheels around it. So running with this metaphor a bit, we could say that Jesus is the North Star of Christianity. Being a Christian is simply about following Jesus, about being oriented to and oriented by Jesus. But then the question is, what was Jesus' North Star? What was the fixed point in his universe that gave him his bearings? How did he orient himself? Where did he look for direction? Now, in some Christian traditions, the cross is the obvious answer. Jesus, they say, was born to die on the cross for our sins. Every step of his life took him towards the cross. Now, the problem with pointing to the cross as the meaning and objective of Jesus' life is as simple as the explanation. What does it mean? I mean, it is a physical artifact with enormous historical content. It's a religious symbol with enormous theological and emotional resonance. But for a lot of people, it's a riddle. And if we read the Bible in its entirety, all the way from Genesis to Revelations, the cross is certainly a point along the way, certainly one of the primary turning points. But it's neither the end nor the beginning. Now, other Christian traditions point to God as Jesus' North Star, but the problem with the word God is that it functions like an indefinite pronoun. In the case of God, it refers to a seemingly indefinite, huge concept that means so many different things to so many different people. The word God, if you will, evokes the entire night sky rather than a fixed point. Now, in no way am I discarding the cross and God as obvious points of primary orientation for Jesus' identity and journey. But I think there's a better starting point, better again as in more helpful, which will make Jesus, along with the cross and God for that matter, more readily accessible for folks like us. And I think, following on Henry Nouwen's work, that Jesus' North Star was how and who he was to God. In a word, beloved. Because this adjective, beloved, quite literally cuts through so much that's ultimately peripheral or inconsequential when living the Christian life and walking the Christian way. Beloved just cuts right through so much argumentation which comes along with the cross and God. In Jesus, beloved is God's noun, beloved by God. According to the Bible, our first acquaintance with Jesus as an adult is at the moment of his baptism, his moment of commitment to or realization of his true self. And it reads like this, according to Matthew. And when Jesus had been baptized, just as he came up from the water, suddenly the heavens were opened to him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting on him. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, the beloved, with whom I am well pleased." So, if we're going to learn from this passage, we have to jettison so many of our preconceived notions about time and space and reality and human beings as purely physical and God as purely not. But here's this person, a real person, irrespective of gender, reaching up out of the waters of a new birth, maybe a second amniotic fluid, if you will. And all of us have had these thresholds in our lives when we reach out from wherever we are for something more, our true self, our path. And here, Jesus is reaching in a movement towards, in the embodiment of a commitment to the divine. And the divine reaches out from the distance most of us imagine the divine confining itself to, from the heights of the skies. And God completely affirms this individual in all his individuality, my beloved child. I'm personally, utterly pleased with you. You delight me. You are the apple of my eye. Not only is the movement toward reciprocal, but it's warm and personal and affirmative. So what do we see in this experience? It's what I call an embodied peak experience moment. Jesus emerging from the waters, the heavens opening, a voice calling, a dove-like figure descending. This was not some intellectual exercise, but a sensory lived experience, just like our peak moments are. Jesus was a man after all, and his humanity is essential for our ability to follow him. Just to bring this a little closer to you, take a moment now and think about what have been your peak moments, your mountaintop experiences, the times that are unforgettable because of their intensity or vividness and meaning making. Maybe holding a newborn baby, falling in love, seeing your beloved as you enter the church to be married. Maybe there are others. The second thing I see in this experience is a spatial meeting of heaven and earth, a conflation of heaven and earth, if you will, which lets go of our juvenile ideas about heaven above and earth below, or good above and bad below. A moment of reaching out from both sides and touching across the chasm which separates whatever we may think of heaven in our secret hearts and whatever we know of earth from our lived experience. It's as if that space didn't exist, which it clearly didn't for Jesus, and if we follow Jesus, may not for us, at least occasionally. So I'd like you to take a moment and think. Have you ever had any of these kinds of experiences with God? Just jot them down in the details of where and what was happening and how it felt and what it meant to you. Well, my friends, this beloved is the North Star of Christian spirituality, following a person who knew himself to be God's beloved, in whom God delighted. And that is an enormous attractor in Jesus. We find the sense of being God's beloved in Jesus so attractive that we would like to feel it too. I mean, being God's beloved sounds really attractive, doesn't it? Now, the irony of Christian practice and belief is that much of what we seek is already fact. It's not that we need to find anything, but rather see what already is. It's not that we want to be beloved, because that's happening whether we know it or not, want it or not, whether we believe it or not. We are already beloved. Let me repeat. We are beloved whether we know it or not, want it or not, believe it or not. The problem is that most of us just can't believe it, so we can't feel it, which is what we ultimately want as human beings, to feel the belovedness. Now, that's a pretty radical orientation compared to how most people define themselves for themselves. Normally, through an evaluation of what we do, comparison with others, or a list of achievements. But to be defined so positively through the eyes of the central force and energy of the entire universe. So I ask you, what do you think about that? What comes to your mind? What jumps off the page at you? What pulls you in and what pushes you back? Don't dwell too much on any one thing. Just jot them down below in your diary as they come to your mind before you talk yourself out of actually thinking or feeling them. Now, whatever you think about God, wherever it is on the spectrum from denial to doubt to speculation to wonder to certainty, it's probably on the superlative side. And by superlative, I mean that all the gods of every culture are in somehow superlative, achieving or doing something in their essence. In the case of Jesus, the idea that God might enter our world and bring something superlative into the normal, cohabit our life, if you will, is, for lack of a better phrase, really good news. All these Jesus stories are good news, announcements of this wonderful tiding that God is us. Henry Nouwen writes, "The unfathomable mystery of God is that God is a lover who wants to be loved. The one who created us is waiting for our response to the love that gave us our being. God not only says, 'You are my beloved,' God also asks, 'Do you love me?' and offers us countless chances to say yes. That is the spiritual life, the chance to say yes to our inner truth." Can you imagine yourself being the beloved of the entire center of the universe, just you because of the way you are? And if you can't, what gets in the way? What makes you stumble over the possibility? As you think about this and look at your notes and look at what write down, make yourself a mantra for this week or the days ahead. Say to yourself, "I am your child, the beloved. With me you are well pleased. I am your child, the beloved. With me you are well pleased." Whenever you doubt, whenever others challenge you, just breathe your mantra. This experience has been the turning point for millions of people since Jesus was born 2,000 years ago. May God bless you in your practice.